Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be looking at the 9.5 support tier list. So as always, you can find a copy of this Google Doc in the description if you want to jump around to your favorite parts. I'll also have timestamps down there as well. And within this Google Doc, everything that we're going to discuss, I'll have a little mini Google Doc for each one of the top 15 champions. In that, you can find a 1 to 5 rating system, runes, recommended items, and if I have an in-depth guide for the champion, I'll have that linked as well. The rating system that I use is 1 to 5. 1 being the champion is one of the weaker champions at that role. 5 being the champion is one of the strongest at that role. So lane pressure, how likely is the champion able to get priority and just exert their will in the laning phase? Kill threat, how likely is the champion able to get a kill, particularly during the laning phase? Safety is how safe is the champion, especially from ganks during the laning phase. Scaling, how well does the champion perform over time? And then reliability, how likely is it that someone can consistently perform at a high level on this champion? So that's twofold. How difficult is the champion to play in terms of mechanics and decision making? Then also how easy is the champion to counter in terms of other things that are popular in the meta that are really good against that champion. Okay. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you do enjoy this content. Hit that bell. It lets you know whenever I release new content as well. It does help other people find the channel. I am still a relatively small channel, and I know a lot of people out there would like good, clean, in-depth content and not just the 10-minute clickbait all caps video. So help them find it. Leave that like and subscribe. And check out the rest of the content on the channel as well. We do tons of guides, tier lists, individual champion playlists, all sorts of content on the channel, and then I stream every night starting around 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Stop on by. I'm very conversational, answer any questions that you have. We have a good time on stream. It's a wonderful community, so stop by, check it out. You won't regret it. Okay. Let's go ahead and get in here. So just really quickly, I don't think the meta for enchanters or for supports in solo queue is going to change that much on this patch. Maybe a little bit. But a lot of the changes aren't really going to affect solo queue. It might affect pro play some, although I don't think it's going to do a ton there either. But let's go ahead and talk about the patch notes, just how this can affect what's going on in the support position. So Morgana got a small buff to her ult. It's not going to matter that much. She's still going to primarily be a counter pick champion against hard engage, so you still just want to pick her into things like Thresh, Leona. But I wouldn't blind pick her, because if they pick an enchanter like a Sona or a Nami, that could be pretty difficult to deal with. You can win. It's just the problem is they're going to outscale you, because their shields and heals are going to be on a lower cooldown, and oftentimes they have more modifiers in their kit, like better AP scaling, better interactions with other champions, better interactions with things like Ardent Censer and Athene's Unholy Grail. So they're just going to perform better than you a lot of times in long fights. However, if you do have a hyperscaler and they don't have a lot of damage on their team, they have a lot of CC, and you have something like a Vayne on your team, and they're just rocking things like Sejuani, Leona, Lissandra, you know, stuff that doesn't do a lot of damage, where that shield's going to get a ton of value, then she can still be pretty good. So if you do have, you know, a stronger scaling AD carry, or if you have something like a Master Yi on your team that's going to scale really hard, and you know the Master Yi is very good if you OP.GG him, and you're thinking about which champion to play in Champ Select, you see the enemy team has a lot of CC, you see your Master Yi is like 70% win rate, then you could consider Morgana just to help out that Master Yi later on. So she can still be very strong. I would put her in tier 2. I would consider her mostly kind of a specialty pick, but she's not terrible. She's pretty good into most things. She can usually survive the laning phase. Okay, Kayle, however, is terrible. Do not pick Kayle. She's in a really, really bad spot right now.
She's not asleep yet.
Oh, no. Let's see. She thought it was me listening in on her. Oh, no. But anyways, yeah, Kayle is just really bad right now. I think the best place to put her is in the jungle, but anyways, don't play her as support. That's for certain. Do not play her as support. She requires way too much gold to play, and she requires getting to level 16. You're splitting experience in the bot lane. Just don't do it. I think she's way worse than she has been in the past. She still somehow has a better win rate than Tahm Kench in the bot lane, but nevertheless, just do not play her. I think they're gonna have to buff her. They might hot buff her this patch, or they might wait till next patch, but she's in a really, really bad place. Okay, Nico is kind of the new hotness in terms of AD carry. It's not even really new. So many people aren't really doing it yet. There are a couple of people that are sneaking in. with the Nico, but if she starts becoming more popular, we'll see. There have been a couple of other content creators that have talked about her. RVZ Stealth has talked about her. I don't think Philo has mentioned her yet, but it is creeping up. I talk about why this is a thing, why I think that it's a really powerful option for the bot lane right now in my 80 carry tier list, which I just released yesterday, so go back and check that out on the main channel. I spent about 20 minutes talking about it. But the general gist of it is they gave her her stun a huge buff. So to get the max stun, you only have to hit 2 targets instead of 3. So now you can just tag it off of 1 minion and hit somebody else with it. And over the last couple of patches, they fixed a couple of bugs that were in the game that didn't allow her to do damage to towers with her W. But she's really, really strong with Blatherin King plus Gensu's plus Wits End build. And she's got a lot of utility to her. She's got that stun, which gives her a lot of self-peel. She has her ultimate on a low cooldown, which gives her a lot of self-peel. She has a really nice escape with her W. A lot of really good stuff going on with Nico. I had one in my game. I tried it out in a game. I wasn't so good with it, but it's because it's the first time I'd ever played Nico. But there was someone in my game that was playing it. We ended up losing the game because both of our solo lanes were like, I think a combined 2 and 12 by like 10 minutes to assassins. So that game was over. But I think that in bot lane, we were performing really well with it. I was Nami, and I think it's very powerful. So anything that can use Ardent Sensor is going to be good with Nico. So if she does become popular, that's going to inch her up just a little bit. If you can give that Ardent Sensor, because Gensu's, of course, each one of those hits off of Gensu's can proc Ardent Sensors. So she does get a little bit of extra incremental value off of that. How is she doing so far as win rate goes? Bot lane. Oh, look at that. #1 win rate. Now, a lot of people aren't playing her yet. She's only got a 0.4 play rate, but I'm telling you, she's for real. Like, a lot of people in my chat yesterday were like, what are you doing? Are you trolling? Why are you playing Nico? Everybody in the game, like, the people in the game that I was playing are like, report the 80 carry, like, pinging Blatherin King that I bought on her. And all of this stuff. It reminds me a lot of Malzahar support when I was repping Malzahar support right after patch 8.22. I think it was 2.2 or maybe it was 2.3, 2.4. Something in the preseason. Or maybe it was 7. I think it was like 7.22. Anyways, whenever they made his minions like do a ridiculous amount of damage, I was one of the early adopters. I wasn't the earliest person to come up with it, but I was on the train like really early drinking the Kool-Aid on Malzahar support, and everyone thought I was trolling. They're like, oh, it's so bad. Like every game people were pinging me. And then in the next month, it was picked every single game in LCS, pick banned, and then he got nerfed in like 3 or 4 patches. So I think this is one of those things where somehow it just really is flying under the radar. Once again, I didn't invent this. There's a lot of people doing this right now. You've got Uzi, Ruler, Apollo, Reckless, a lot of people, a lot of top tier 80 carries that are definitely not trolling, playing this, or at least testing it out. And I suspect it only got played once. It was 1-0, but it only got played once in the last week in professional play. But it's definitely out there. People are testing it, and it's the build that I'm talking about. It's like the old on-hit cannon type of thing. But I think it's even stronger than on-hit cannon because it takes towers so quickly, and because it has like that really nice stun with the E. It just has so much self-peel and so much scaling off of it. So I think it's even better than on-hit cannon was. But yeah, that's the standard build, just Blade, Gensu's, Wits End. As far as supports go, most things can do well with it. Even things like Leona or Thresh, if you land a stun, she's going to land her root with her E. Really good combo with almost any support. But I do think that Ardent Sensor users, once again, have that slight edge just because of that interaction with Gensu's Rageblade and because she likes attack speed so much. So anyways, watch out for that. Check out the 80 carry tier list that I just did if you want to know more about it. But that might impact which supports are pretty good right now, and it's ones that can work pretty well with Nico. Rakan's basically the same. They gave him a minor buff. It doesn't matter. Like, if you read it carefully, it's basically, right now, you get 1,400, or in the previous patch, you got 1,400 movement speed on your W. And then, whenever you got boots, mobility boots, you'd get an extra 80, so you'd have 1,480 speed. Now they're giving you a flat 1,500 movement speed, regardless of boot. And you'd usually get mobility boots pretty quickly. So they basically gave you 20 movement speed on your W out of, like, the 1,500. So it's a joke. Like, it's like 1% faster. It's like a total placebo buff, just to try to get people to feel better about it. I'm like, it's not a feeling. It's actually really bad. Like, it's terrible. What they did to Rakan is terrible. They basically took off like 30% of his movement speed on him and just gave him back 1% just to kind of spit in his face on this patch. So, yeah, it's because he used to get about 2,200 when he would turn it on, because you gain extra movement speed based on all of your modifiers that you got. You'd have like 2,050 base, and then you'd get extra amount based on your modifiers. So yeah, he went from about 2,200 down to about 1,500. They gave him like 20 more damage on his W. It doesn't matter. He's not good because his W does 20 extra damage. He's good because he's mobile. He has Premier Engage, and he shields. And so that gives him a lot of different options in terms of strategic flexibility, item flexibility, and just usefulness in the meta. So he was my favorite support. I had a really high win rate on him in the preseason, but he's still going to be in a pretty bad position. You can still pick him sometimes into like AD Assassins because he does still get Zeke's early, which protects him, and then he has his shield and Guardian to help protect your AD carry from Assassins. So I still think he's all right in some situations, but he's way, way less powerful than he was, and this buff really didn't change anything. Relic Shield changes. If you're already like full health pretty much, or pretty close to full health, and you trigger Relic Shield, you're going to be getting less health off of it, but really it's not going to matter that much. The same kind of supports, tank supports, are going to be good in pro play. They're still going to be bad in solo queue, and people are still going to get Relic Shield on them. So I don't think it's really going to matter that much. It'll power them down a little bit, but I don't think it's going to make a meaningful shift to the meta. Aftershock, we'll see. You know, they did take it down from 3 seconds to 2.5 seconds. I still think 2.5 seconds is a really long time of protection for getting all those extra resists. So it's still going to be good on the champion. It's going to be good on. I don't think that all of a sudden Alistar is not going to take Aftershock anymore. Leona, you know, obviously still going to take Aftershock. So we'll see. I mean, I guess this is a slight nod to champions that don't take Aftershock, like Braum and Tom Kench. You know, maybe they gain a 0.5% here or something, just because they get better against their competition in pro play. But as far as solo queue, I don't think it's going to matter that much. Okay, so that's it for kind of the meta overview here. Why Enchanters overall? I get asked this a lot. Like, why are Enchanters good in solo queue? Why are they not played in pro play? A lot of this comes down to the economy is a big part of it, and just sort of what you need out of teams at different levels of play. So the lower you go down in ranking, the more gold teams are going to get. Oftentimes they're going to hit less CS, but there's going to be a lot more kills going on, and so there's just going to be a lot more gold floating around, especially for supports who are going to rack up a ton of assists, and you don't CS anyways. So it's just like pure money for supports when you're like in silver and lower. And that's why champions that have better multiplicative stacking, which is Enchanters, and I've talked about this a lot in past videos, I'm not going to rehash it all because I do want to try to make this video like an hour or less. But basically, plus healing and shielding as a stat scales extremely well because it benefits from the plus healing and shielding stat itself and AP ratios, and it works with resists rather than against resists. So if someone has, you know, 100 armor and you shield them for 100, it's going to take 200 physical damage to break that shield. So it works with the resist, versus if you try to do 100 physical damage to somebody who has 100 armor, then they're only going to take 50 physical damage. So in that respect, plus healing and shielding is in many ways 4 times more powerful than damage because of the way that it works with resists. Okay, so that's why in a super high gold environment, almost always the best champions are going to be Enchanters or AP supports, but the AP supports have to have more gold than the normal Enchanters. And that's what you're going to see a lot of times, you know, in like silver, bronze, and things like that. You're going to see the highest win rate chance are typically going to be like AP supports if they get ahead early, and a lot of that is because there's, you know, people are smurfing down in that elo as well, but then also Enchanters are going to have a much higher win rate. However, as you get into pro play, there's a lot less gold. So a lot of times pro players are just going to be able to get their 4-ward item, and then they're going to get a bunch of control wards. They might get their tier 2 boots, and maybe they complete 1 item. So if we look over here, and just click on like Galio or whatever here, you know, look at all this, right? You've got boots, you have your 1 completed item, you got your 4-ward item, and that's it. You have half another item. Same deal. A lot of times they don't even complete a 2nd item. the game's over. You know, sometimes, like in those really long games, right? In a 38-minute game, he was able... This one, he didn't even complete a second item. It's like literally a 38-minute game right here, and he doesn't even have a second full support item. He didn't even get boots 2. He has brown boots and a redemption and his forward item and pieces of another item. So in 38 minutes, he can't even complete that because there were likely less than 20 kills in the game. He has 14 kill participation here. You know, this one, 5 kill participation. This one, 8, 3, 13. Whereas like in silver, it's not uncommon, you know, to end like maybe 3, 5, and 25 or 3, 5, and 30 or something like that, right? Like you're going to participate in like 30 or 40 kills. So that's what I'm talking about. And so in that environment, you want the champions that have the best baseline power, the highest base stats, and the highest effectiveness off the least amount of gold. And those are tanks, because tanks just have free stats, right? They just have more health than enchanters. They have more armor, more magic resist, usually a faster base movement speed. And a lot of times they're predicated on CC. Usually they have really good CC, like Thresh or Braum with all of his multi-stuns. And they have some kind of steroid to protect themselves as well. So not only do they have more armor and magic resist and health, but they usually have something that gives them a little bit more survivability, like Braum's shield or Alistar's ultimate, Galio's taunt. All of these things mean that tank supports are just baseline, just worth more gold. They just make more contributions off of less items. So if you're in if you're in an environment where there's not going to be a lot of kills, where it's going to be a lot of team fights, tanks are also way better in team fights. Because usually they have some kinds of abilities that, you know, CC multiple targets. Then that's where they're going to be good, right? Where they just have baseline effectiveness off of just their abilities and just their base stats, right? But if you're getting fed a ton of gold, then someone like Sona is going to be a lot stronger because she has really powerful interactions with plus healing and shielding and AP. So, but her base stats are trash, right? She has really low armor, really low health. Her abilities, you know, don't do a lot by themselves. She doesn't have a lot of CC. She has her ult, but that's it. So she's not going to be as good in this type of environment. So that's why you can't just blindly go and look and say, oh my gosh, you know, all of the pro players are playing these tank supports, or everybody's playing Galio support in pro play. That means he's really good in solo queue. It's like, no, he's not. It's a completely different kind of game, especially for support, because your gold income fluctuates dramatically based on the type of meta that's going on, right? So if you're an 80 carry, you know, and you hit 100 CS in bronze, you're going to have the same amount of gold as if you hit 100 CS in challenger, right? Now, there's going to be more kills in bronze as well, but you have like a more steady source of income that's kind of predictable, whereas with support, it just varies dramatically. So the entire meta shifts based on how many kills are going on in the game a lot of times and how many assists you can pick up. Because you're not going to be farming anything anywhere, so you're kind of like beholden to just how clowny the game gets, pretty much. Okay, it's been a long time on that meta update. I don't know. I just wanted to go over that, but we'll go over the champs here real quick. One final thing that I wanted to mention on this, I get asked this all the time. Why do I take barrier on some champs? Why do I take exhaust on some champs? What about Ignite? Well, Ignite just got nerfed a few patches ago, and as I always say, if you think you have a very strong chance of getting kills in the laning phase, then Ignite is going to be stronger, right? But as the game goes on, particularly if they have assassins that could get really fed and take over the game, sometimes Exhaust or Barrier can be more valuable than Ignite. Because realistically, Ignite in the mid game, you're usually not going to be able to Ignite someone that's valuable if you're playing an Enchanter. Right, if you're a Sona, you're playing pretty far back. You're not going to Ignite their AD carry. You're not going to Ignite their support. You're going to be able to Ignite their Olaf or something that's running at your AD carry, which is okay, I guess. Or you might Ignite like their Alistar that just engaged, you know, but you're not going to be like getting a ton of kills off of that most of the time, you know. So that's when something like Barrier or Exhaust can come in, because Ignite's not going to do anything to that 5-0 Zed or that 5-0 LeBlanc or the 5-0 Fizz that's coming at your AD carry. But Exhaust might, or like if Kayn is coming at you, you know, Barrier might be able to save you. So I think that Barrier and Exhaust, particularly on champions like Sona, Janna, Soraka, and just, Maybe Nami to a lesser extent, because Nami actually stands a decent chance of killing people in lane if you land a bubble. You know, I think those are decent options. So if you're thinking about barrier plus exhaust, consider the following here. So barrier is on a lower cooldown. It's 180 seconds versus 210 seconds. Barrier blocks more damage at lower levels, but exhaust is going to block more damage at higher levels. Assuming that you put the exhaust on someone when you're at 100 health and they try to 100 to 0 you. So if you take 500 burst damage at level 6, you throw up your barrier right when the damage is going to start. You exhaust them right when the damage is going to start. Then barrier is going to block 215 and exhaust is going to block 200. Okay? But then once it goes to 1,000 burst damage, then barrier is going to block 315 at level 11 and exhaust is going to block 400 at level 11. So that's more effective. Now, a couple of things to keep in mind about this as well. Barrier is much more likely to get full value. This is the most important thing. If someone jumps on you and does 50% of your health before you exhaust him, Rengar just jumps on you and just smacks you for like 50% of your health instantly, and then you exhaust him, you're not getting full value out of that exhaust, right? Because you're already, you know, if you were at 1,000 health, you're already at 500. And so the effectiveness of the exhaust is only going to work from 500 to 0 rather than 1,000 to 0. Versus barrier, you always get the full amount if someone's all-inning you, right? So if Rengar jumps on you, and let's say that you have this 1,000 health here, for example, if he jumps on you and you have exhaust and he knocks you down to 500, you're only going to get 200 blocked out of it, right? But if he jumps on you with barrier, knocks you to 50%, and then you press barrier, you're still going to block 315 no matter what, right? Unless he just stops damaging you for barrier's duration, which is not going to happen. So then you're getting a lot more value out of it. So that's really important to keep in mind because a lot of times champions are already damaging you before you exhaust them because they will catch you off guard. Also works against range. There are some cases where something that's really long range might be trying to kill you, like a Jinx Rocket, an Ezreal ultimate, a Xerath ultimate, Caitlyn ultimate. There's a lot of stuff that could hit you, and you're not going to be able to exhaust it because they're too far away, like Twitch opening up at 850 and trying to unload on you. So that's where barrier can be useful too against range threats. Another thing, barrier gets through ignite. So if they put that ignite on you, barrier is going to block ignite damage, part of it, right? Exhaust does not do anything to ignite because ignite is true damage, and exhaust does not reduce true damage. That's another thing about some champions like Cho'Gath or Vayne. Barrier is going to block that, but if they do true damage to you, or Darius, if they do true damage to you, then exhaust is not going to do anything to them. So there are some corner cases with champions that do a lot of true damage where barrier is going to be better. Another thing is barrier scales with plus healing and shielding and revitalize. So if you have plus 20% plus healing and shielding, that applies to barrier. That does not apply to exhaust. If you have revitalize and you press barrier when you're under 40% health, you get extra procs off of Revitalize. Does not apply to exhaust. And it can apply to multi-enemy damage. So if you're getting hit by like 2 enemies in the laning phase, you can exhaust one of them, but it's not going to prevent any damage from the other one, right? Versus barrier is going to prevent damage from an unlimited amount of sources that are coming at you, including things like, you know, in weird situations, maybe Baron or Dragons hitting you, or a tower shot might be just about to finish you off. You can't exhaust the tower, but you can barrier the tower. Or just like little random minion hits early on if you're in a skirmish and all in 2v2. So there are a lot of uses for barrier that people don't think, and you're going to get pinged and people are going to think you're trolling if you take barrier. I mean, the main thing about exhaust is you can protect your AD carry or somebody else with exhaust, so you can protect them from the assassins. But if you're playing a high scaling Enchanter support like a Soraka or a Sona or something like that, if you stay alive in the fight, you're probably going to win the fight. So sometimes it's better just to 100% make sure you're alive so that you can heal everyone else up. And this has been very common for a long time on Soraka, right? This has been the standard. Soraka takes barrier like every single game, just about, right? I mean, I guess there are some exceptions here, but barrier is still the most common one. Like, you never see ignite on Soraka. It's barrier if they have hard CC, if they have like a Leona or a Thresh. Maybe you see a cleanse. You know, occasionally you might see some exhaust sprinkled in there. But by and large, what you're going to see most of the time is barrier. Now, if your AD carry is smart and they're on the ball, then they're going to take barrier and you're going to take heal because your plus healing and shielding scales off of heal as well. So then both of you benefit from that extra heal. But a lot of times your AD carry is just going to take heal no matter what because they want to chase down kills with the movement speed. But this is like common wisdom on Soraka for all the reasons I just described. But for some reason people think you're trolling if you put it on Sona. But it's like they're almost the same style of champion. Just, you know, they have slightly different abilities, things like that. But they're sustained healing over time. So, anyways, I think it's something to definitely consider, and most people never even think about it. But I'm not saying you should do it every game, but you should definitely like put it in the back of your mind as like, okay, this is an option, you know, in some matchups. Okay, let's plow through these. So, not much has changed on this tier list. I moved Sona back up near the top. Just she feels more consistent. Like Nami does have the kill threat in lane, but Sona, it's just like if you get to you know, 1 and 2 items. You're just so supremely powerful once you get Athene's Unholy Grail plus Redemption. It's just like you just can't lose a team fight. Like you can almost literally just run around in circles and press W and you're probably going to win. Like she gets such insane value out of Athene's Unholy Grail. And that's the meta that we're in solo queue right now. It's like the Ardent Censer meta, but instead of Ardent Censer, it's Athene's. So you just want to ask yourself, like, who uses Athene's best? A lot of times in solo queue. And the answer is Sona. She has the highest win rate right now. Nami also has a really high win rate. And you know I don't base all of my stuff, you know, on win rates, but that is something to consider. And I've been talking about these champions being really strong before anyone else has even talked about them. I've, you know, for the last, like, 5 patches, I've said, like, Sona, Nami, Soraka. Like, right after the Rakan nerf, I was like, that's it. Before it was, like, Rakan with Sona and Nami typically in it, but they're all still very strong. And I mean, if you look at this, you know, top 3 champs, all enchanters. And a lot of this is, you know, I've talked about this in past videos as well, but they've just nerfed most of the damage in the game, right? They nerfed Dark Harvest, nerfed Electrocute, nerfed Ignite, nerfed early jungle, Morellos. They nerfed a lot of lane bullies, nerfed Brand, Zyra, Pyke, Alistar, Jhin, Nami, Rakan. I know Nami's on the list as well, but the fact that Nami got nerfed actually evened out the playing ground a little bit so that Sona could actually be stronger, so that Soraka could be stronger as well. And then they ended up buffing Forbidden Idol back in the preseason, and they buffed Athene's back in like 8.12. So all of this has come together, and hyperscaling AD carries are back, so things like Ardent Censer are pretty good too. But she's just the biggest abuser of the enchanter items in the game right now, particularly after the like brutal nerfs to Janna last year. Sona's just kind of taken over charge here. You know, as I talk about every patch note, her W is just absurd. Like, I've done the math on this thing before. You know, you can very easily get into 1,000 range every time you press this, like 1,000 effective health. So healing and shielding. Because even once you max this out, even with like no AP, if you hit 5 people with this, that's 625. You heal off of, you heal 2 people with this. That's 220. So that's what, 855? And then it's going to have a 200% AP ratio. So if you just have 100 AP, then it's going to have over 1,000 effective health. And at level 11, she gives herself a free 25% CDR in addition to whatever other CDR you have. Stacks multiplicatively, not additively. But anyways, you're easily going to get yourself up to like, you know, between 30 to 40% CDR. And this goes to a 6-second cooldown. So it's going to really be closer to a 3 to a 4-second cooldown on this. So it's like every 3.5 seconds, you throw out an effective 1,000 health. That's like 1,000, you know, whatever the number is, like, you know, 500 health per second or something like that you're throwing out. Maybe not that much, but it's a hell of a lot. It's really, really hard to break through the shield. And the thing is, this is applying Airy. Airy's going to add an additional shield for like an extra 50 to the lowest target. It's healing people with Athene's. It benefits off of Revitalize. It benefits off of plus healing and shielding. So if you have, you know, 20% plus healing and shielding, now you're talking about 1,200 effective health. If people are below 40%, you know, a couple of them are below 40%, they're going to get an extra 15% effectiveness. That's going to knock it up to like, you know, 1,400 health. If you get to 200 AP, that's going to be another 200 off of that. So then you're up to 1,600 effective health. It just gets ludicrous. Like, the amount of healing this champion puts out is disgusting in team fights. Like you'll see even single target sometimes. If somebody's below 40% health, you have like 20% plus healing and shielding Revitalize is going to proc. You'll heal somebody sometimes just out of nowhere for like 400 or something ridiculous. Because you got to remember, Athene's, let me just pull up Athene's here, and a lot of people don't understand this item. But you really need to understand this item to understand why Enchanters are so strong right now. So this right here, this 35% pre-mitigation damage, this means that, like, even if they resist some of this damage, even if they have, like, 1,000,000 magic resist and you don't do any damage to them, if you would hit them for 500 before resist, that's what it counts. So basically, it's even better than 35% spell vamp, if you want to think of that. So it's like lifesteal on crack that applies to everybody on your team over time, if you want to think of it like that. Like, think about just how powerful lifesteal is. You know, you got your Blade of the Ruined King, and it feels like someone's stealing all this health, right? It's like 12% lifesteal. This is 35% on an item, and you can apply it to other people. And lifesteal is only on how much damage you actually do, I'm pretty sure, not on pre-mitigation damage. So you can store up to 250 on this. So if we look at Sona here, right? Let's say that you press a Q. You got like 3 points of Q in the landing phase, right? You hit 2 enemies for this. That's 200. You hit them with the bonus damage here for another 20. That's 220. You hit them with an auto attack for, I don't know, let's just say like 80, just for easy math. This is like saying you don't have any AP also. So, you know, whatever that was, 200, 220 plus 80, 300. Let's just say it's 300. All right, your auto's not going to do that much, but you're going to have some kind of AP. We'll just say 300. That means you're getting 35% of that, so about a third back in terms of healing. So that's like about 100 or so. So you're usually going to get 100 plus healing every time you press your Q. That's double what your normal heal is on somebody. Just about. So instead of healing them for, you know, 110, you're really healing them for 210. And that's every time you do damage, every time you auto attack, every time you do your Hymn of Valor. If you use Crescendo in there, if you know, just do, if Airy hits them, if you have like Scorch or anything like that, anything that does damage. If you take Ignite, you can do that. So she's just constantly in fights, churning out these Qs because the Q is on a low cooldown. So you're doing, you know, it's on like a 5-second cooldown max rank. And at max rank, it's doing 320. So then you're going to be hitting people for like 500 and healing for, you know, like 150 later on. So that just combos so well because you're constantly churning out this damage. There's no skill shots. It's doing full damage every time in a team fight. You can't miss it. You just press the button and the little stuff goes out and zaps people. So it does pretty good damage, and it has 35% spell vamp that you apply to other people. This also gets modified by plus healing and shielding. So if you have 20% plus healing and shielding, you get 20% more healing off of this. If you take Revitalize and they're below 40%, you get an extra 40%, or you get an extra 15% healing off of this. So it just starts getting really gross really quickly. Like, it's a ton of value. And this thing is pretty valuable by itself. Like, it's 114% efficient, not including the passive. And this other passive here, where you get 5 extra ability power per 25% regeneration, is crazy gold efficient. That means every fairy charm that you get, you're getting an extra, you know, about 125 gold value. So you're getting a, you know, double value off of that item, right? It's like you're spending 125 gold to make 250 gold. And guess what fairy charms build into? Every single item that Sona buys. So that's partially why I really like rushing Athene's now instead of Ardent Censer. It gives you the 100% base mana regen instead of 50% that Ardent does. It gives you a little bit of protection with 30% magic resist, so that helps out against most of the champs in the bot lane. Even things like Leona and Thresh, like, you don't think they do that much magic damage, but they do chip in some. You know, Thresh's ultimate is magic. His Flay, I'm pretty sure, is magic. You know, most of Leona's abilities are magic damage. Then obviously you have your Zyras, your Brands, and things like that, but you've also got your Namis, your Sorakas. All that stuff is magic damage for the most part. Even a lot of 80 carries do magic damage to an extent in one way or another, right? And so that 30% magic resist is very handy. And then every time you get more mana regen. Sorry, kind of zoned out there for a second. More mana regen, you're getting more value. So if you get this and then you get redemption right after this, that redemption has 150% extra mana regens. That means you're going to be getting an extra 30 AP off of this. So you get up to 80 AP. Then if you have Frostfang, then this goes to 90 AP. So you're paying 2,100 gold for an item that ends up having like 90 AP on it. And that extra 40 AP that you get that's not included in the base, because this 100% regeneration also applies to itself. So you end up with 50 ability power on this. Once you go to 90, that 40 extra value that you're getting out of that is going to give you somewhere in the neighborhood of like 850 gold value. So it's really, really strong. It's a great item to start with. It gives you a bunch of extra AP, so you can do more damage in the laning phase once you get your Amp Tome. It gives you Chalice of Harmony, which gives you a lot of extra healing in the laning phase as well to help you get through some of these attrition matchups. And it gives you this crazy amount of healing and shielding right off the bat that continues to scale as you get more and more fairy charms. So I think that getting Athenes is just a grand slam. It's really good. Then if you get redemption after that, then that's really nice because you're basically getting an extra, 30 AP off of this in addition to redemption's normal stuff. And so you're just going to have an insane amount of healing. It's going to be very, very difficult to burst through you. So that makes her supremely powerful. Now, redemption also has health on it, so that does prevent you from getting spiked out as easily because you do get some defense. You get some magic resist off Athene, some health off redemption. Ardent Censer has no defense, but it does have a lot of offense. So if you do have something that's going to get Gensus on your team or has some kind of special interaction with Ardent, so if it's Lucian with his double shots, Vayne with Gensus, Nico with Gensus, if you have like a Varus or something with Gensus, then Ardent Censer can be really good, or like a Master Yi on your team with Gensus. Then Ardent Censer can be really, really good. Obviously, it's going to have a ton of value as well because everybody that Sona touches with any of her auras is going to give out the Ardent Censer. So she's all around super powerful. I mean, the only knock on her is that she is squishy, so you can die, but you can take things like Bone Plating, you can take Exhaust, you can take Barrier. Your heal heals yourself at the same time that it heals other people. So yeah, you're shielding everybody else and healing them with your W, but don't forget, it also heals you. It also shields you. And that's very different from someone like Soraka, who hurts herself whenever she heals. Someone like Nami, who a lot of the time has to choose, is she going to heal someone else or is she going to heal herself? And then Nami's going to be like a 10-second cooldown on her shield, whereas this is going to be a base like 5 seconds, right? Because you're going to have this and you're going to have her ultimate. They should really take this off her ultimate to nerf her. I mean, this is just like, why is this even here? Like all this, she's already so strong, you don't need this. But anyway, so that keeps her topped off a lot of the time and makes her a little bit more resilient than some of the other champions out there. So she is very strong. Now you can get a defensive boot if you want to. She doesn't have to have mobilities. It's nice if you get them, but you do have a little bit of a speed up with your Song of Celerity, so you can get Ninja Tabby or Mercury Treads, but it's really hard to get any other defensive item to justify it because those 3 items, the Ardent Censer, Redemption, and Athene's Unholy Grail, are all so strong on her. You really, really have to get those items. So you don't want to have to stop and get an Hourglass or something else. So she is still going to be vulnerable to Assassins. She is vulnerable to ganks, so you got to be careful. But if you don't die, you're going to completely take over the game. She's like one of the best hard carry, like super easy to play champions. Okay, so Sona back in the game. I just started playing her again. I was doing pretty well with Nami also, but Sona just added that extra bit of consistency, especially once I started taking Barrier and Exhaust more than Ignite. I really improved my win rate quite a bit in the last week or so. Okay, Nami's another one. So Nami is similar to Sona. She doesn't have as much scaling, but she does have better CC. She's still going to go Athene's first, and then either Redemption or Ardent Censer, depending on the situation after that. So what you get with Nami is you get a lot more lane pressure. So your Ebb and Flow both does damage and heals you on one spell. Whereas early on, Sona is going to have to choose, can she do her Q to harass, or does she do her W because they're very expensive. Like the W itself at level 1 is 80 mana, and all that it gives you, if you're just healing a single target, it's like 30 heal or 35 heal if you're not healing 2 targets and you're not using the shield, which most people don't. So that's really, really inefficient because this is 70 and it does damage and heals. So it does 70 and then 60, right? The balance is going to decay a little bit, but you're getting a ton of value off of this most of the time. And so this is one of the best trading tools in the whole game. It's really good. It's relatively cost efficient, especially early on. Then, of course, you have the Awkward Prison. If you land this, it's a 1.5 second stun for one, only putting 1 point in it. It's a great 1 point wonder. It can hit multiple targets, particularly in team fights. You can hit 2-3 people with this Awkward Prison. So if you aim it right, it's really good. You should aim it right when they're trying to last hit during the laning phase, particularly cannons. People just will not lay down the cannon. They have to go up and try to last hit it. And if you hit them with the bubble, you can usually lead it just a little bit behind them. Most of the time, people will try to dash backwards after they get the CS. So you can play around with that and practice it and land it. The thing that she does is she has a really good time of sticking to people and helping your team stick to people because you give everybody this extra bit of bonus movement speed whenever you cast any abilities on them. So, this ebb and flow is bouncing around in team fights. People are getting sped up. Tidecaller's Blessing speeds people up as well, but then it also has this slow on the auto attacks. So it basically keeps someone slow for about 3 seconds or so because, every second they're going to hit them while they're chasing them down. May not last quite that long, but either way, it applies a lot of slow. And it applies pretty good damage, too. 255 damage with the +6 is pretty good. And then you have an ultimate, which is really nice. Now, a lot of people, a lot of AD carries in some of my games get very confused about this. They think you can just instantly cast it and hit everybody. It's like, no. It is very, very slow, the movement speed. A lot of times they have to not see it coming or they have to be very close to you or already CC'd. Anyone that has a pulse is going to be able to dodge this thing unless you put them in a situation that makes that more difficult, right? So you hit them with a bubble first, or they're in a narrow corridor, or they're CC'd, or you're hiding in a bush or something like that, right? You can't just throw this at them when they're at 900 range and expect to hit it, right? Everybody's going to dodge it. So keep that in mind. But it is pretty good at knocking things out of the air too. So if Jarvan is about to engage on you or Zach's about to fly in, if you do this fast enough. Now keep in mind it does have a half-second cast time. So that can be a little frustrating, but it does have a lot of utility. It also speeds up your allies by quite a lot. People forget about that. But if you run this through your allies, so if you're on the back line, you throw it through your allies, then end up hitting the enemies, then they get double the movement speed off of it. So it's pretty nice. She has really good trading, nice CC with her Awkward Prison and her Tidal Wave. This is also really good for long range threats like Xerath or Jhin, who's channeling an ult, or a Karthus or something if you can get to him fast enough. Has some really long range where you can stop stuff like that. So that's handy. But yeah, just adds a whole lot of extra stickiness to your team. Really good trading in the laning phase. Nice CC with Awkward Prison and your ultimate. Doesn't scale quite as hard as Sona does in team fights, but she still does operate pretty well in skirmishes. She scales really well with AP on her ebb and flow because it not only gives extra damage or healing per bounce, but it also reduces the amount of attrition that you get per bounce. So every bounce is going to get a double benefit off of it. Check out my Nami guide if you want to see the math behind how that works. I break all of that down for you. But anyways, yeah, I think Nami's still going to be really strong. And it's the same items as Sona. So you're just going to go Airy, Mana Flow Band. I like Absolute Focus on her as well. And then you can take Water Walking. You can also take something like Scorch if you want to do that. Or you can take Gathering Storm. All of those are viable in different situations. And then there's Bone Plating and Revitalize. You got to have Revitalize with these builds. That thing's just so OP with Athenes. Okay. If it's a more attrition-based lane, if you're playing against a Sona or a Soraka or a Karma or something like that, you can take Second Wind if you need to. But Bone Plating's not going to give you eye-popping, damage prevention. If you look at the end of the game, it's wow, it prevented 200 damage this game. It looks really lame, but when you need it, you need it, okay? And so that's why I'm still a big, fan of Bone Plating, because in those all-in situations, it can prevent a pretty good chunk of damage. Okay, so Nami still going to be pretty good. Soraka, still strong. This is going to be one of the more popular ones, right? Is she the most picked? Actually, Nami's the most picked right now, but Soraka's still on the popular side. You know, her Q does give a lot of really cost-efficient harass. I think it's only like 40 mana at early levels. Like, it has a really, really good mana to damage ratio. So if you land this consistently on people, this Q, you can really run them out of lane quickly. Yeah, it starts at 40 and goes to 60 mana. So 60 mana for 230 base damage with a 0.35 AP ratio is very, very good. You're getting like a 4-to-1 payout on that, which means you're getting 4 times the damage that you're paying in mana. So that's very, very nice. It's also on a super short cooldown, 5 seconds. You can spam this a lot in the laning phase, and you heal for a ton off of it. So you heal for 88 off of it. Now, it doesn't sound like much, but that is on something that's 5 seconds in addition to everything else that it does. And the most important thing here is that it increases your allied heal by 210, or by 110 rather. So this doesn't sound like much, but that's over a 50% extra heal. It has a 0.5 AP ratio on it. Now, this 0.5 does scale with how many points you have in it. So if you put a lot of points in this, it goes from a 0.3 ratio to a 0.5. So you're increasing the damage, you're increasing the base heal, and you're increasing the scaling based on the AP that you have. So you know what that means? This should be one of the things you're maxing out early because it's strong as hell. I see so many Sorakas still trying to max Equinox in the laning phase or get 3 in Equinox. The meta changed. This was good in a meta where Scorch was much stronger, where Airy was much stronger, and where there was a lot less sustain in the lane. Now everybody's got sustain. You know, half the 80 carries you're going to see bot lane are going to take either Blade the Ruined King or some kind of lifesteal, right? You think Draven, okay? Usually he's going to go Bloodthirster. Vayne, Blade the Ruined King. Lucian, Blade the Ruined King. Nico, Blade the Ruined King, right? And who are the best supports? They're all healing and shielding supports. You're going to be playing against Sona. You're going to be playing against Nami. You know, you are Soraka in this case, but like you're going to see a lot of Sonas and Namis. You know, a lot of people, if they take a champion that has a rough laning phase, like Vayne, they're going to take Doran Shield. A lot of these champions are also going to take Ravenous Hunter. A lot of the big-time 80 carries right now. So there's just so much sustain in the lane that this damage is just not going to stick. It's like, okay, you max this out. All right, you do 230. You know, whatever, point click. This also does 230. It's the same damage. It's like, okay, well, this is guaranteed. You just point it on them, and it works. It's like, okay, but you get 3 chances with this. All you have to do is hit 1 out of 3, because it's on a 5-second cooldown. Now, yeah, it's going to cost you a little bit more mana to do that, but, like, mana is not going to be a problem. So as long as you're hitting, like, 1 out of 3, 1 out of 4 of these star calls, it's going to give you the same damage output as Equinox. So do not max Equinox. It's really bad right now compared to the Q max. This is so good in team fights because it empowers your Q. So you're constantly running around, casting extra heals on people, doing double healing. Just imagine if, like, you could get an ability that said your heals do 50% more. It's going to give you 50% plus healing and shielding, because that's what this does. If you hit people with this, you get plus 50% healing and shielding. So it's extremely good. It also gives you movement speed. When you hit this, it allows you to kite people. You gain 10% bonus movement speed. People forget about that. It heals you personally. So you're going to be damaging yourself a lot while you're casting these heals. You need some way to heal yourself back. How do you do that? You do that through this. So I just see so many people just get like 1 point in this in the laning phase. You know, maybe then they'll max Equinox and they'll start maxing W because they saw some pro do it like 1.5 years or 2 years ago. It's like, don't do that. It's not good anymore, okay? So you should be getting 2 to 3 points of star call in the laning phase. So you get your harassment, and then you need to max out your W after that. So that you can have really nice healing for when the team fights break out. So this gives you really good harass. It heals you. It heals your allies, allows you to get auto attacks in there pretty easily, allows you to proc Airy a lot on people. If you want to take Scorch, you can proc Scorch on people a lot. So she can be very aggressive. She's just very, very vulnerable to all-in champs. And she's very vulnerable like in team fights as well, because she doesn't heal herself like Sona, and she can't stand as far back as Nami. Nami can stand 725 back and bounce that wave off of everybody in fights. Soraka has to get within 550 range, and she's constantly damaging herself when she's healing people. So that makes her really vulnerable. And her ability to speed like herself up and get away from things is limited. You know, she's got this 10% boost here. But that's not the same as like Nami. Her CC is limited. The silence is nice. You know, there's some clutch silence moments that can be very, very good. So, like, no doubt it is a good ability, but it's not the same thing as hitting a bubble on somebody, right? They can walk out of it most of the time. It's not the same thing as, you know, hitting someone with the Sona ult and, you know, stunning them for a second and a half. So, it's good in the right situations, but a lot of times it's not going to stop people from running at you. It's just going to delay them or annoy them for a second or two. Like, but there are some clutch moments, like, you know, when Zed finishes his ult or like right before he's going to finish it, or if someone's trying to teleport on you, TF's trying to ult on you or whatever. Yeah, putting the silence on him is a big deal, but it's not the same as a lot of hard CC on other champs. And then, of course, she has the global pressure with her ult. So overall, she's still going to be good, but she's just a little bit more vulnerable. And she is extremely weak to grievous wounds, because every single thing in her kit is a heal. Versus Sona, yeah, grievous wounds kind of sucks if they get that, but you still have a lot of shielding also with your W, right? And so, you know, a lot of your power is the shield on the W. So grievous wound sucks, you know, if you're playing Sona, but you still are going to be pretty effective. Nami, you still have a lot of CC. You know, a lot of the effectiveness of Nami are her bubbles, her E, her wave. Like, yeah, the healing's nice, and it's going to get reduced to an extent, but, you know, part of that is also its damage and its ability to speed people up, which is why it's helpful. So, you know, grievous wounds, once again, kind of sucks for Nami, but she has other stuff going for her. Soraka doesn't have anything going for her. You know, if she doesn't get these heals off, it's going to be really bad. So, she is more vulnerable to that if they get something like Executioner's Calling. So, overall, Soraka is pretty good. She's just a little bit more vulnerable to other champs, but she potentially has some of the best pressure in the laning phase if you're constantly landing those Qs, and she has some of the best healing output in the game later on, especially to single targets, because her heal is only on a 2-second cooldown, and if you empower it with your Q, it gets really, really large, right? It gets to like a 300 heal or something, right? Because the base is like 205, something like that, and then... yeah, it's like 200, and then you can get up to an extra 110 here. This is a 0.5 ratio. This is a 0.6. So if you're maxing out your Q second, you're landing the Q, and then you're also healing them, it's going to have a 1.1 ratio on your heal that's on a 2-second cooldown. Now, this does happen over time. So if you're healing the same person, you're not going to get the full benefit out of this. But still, like, it's pretty damn good. Even if you don't include the ratio here, like a 300 heal on a 2-second cooldown that's got like a bare minimum, you know, a 0.7 ratio, and if you're healing the same person consecutively, and then if you only heal them once, getting the full 1.1 ratio out of it is pretty tremendous. So, yeah, Soraka going to be strong. You know, you want to go Redemption, Ardent Sensor. I like Mikhail's on her if they have a lot of CC because it gives you healing to make up for the fact you're taking a lot of damage. But if you're landing a lot of those Qs, you can also go Athene's, and that can be really useful. Okay, I think that Lulu, and we got to finish this up. I definitely don't want this to take much more than an hour. Lulu is kind of a rising star. She doesn't have like a great win rate, but I think that's just a lot of people don't play her correctly. She's deceptively somewhat challenging to play, not because like her skill shots are hard to hit. She really doesn't have any skill shots outside of her Q, but because the decision making is difficult for people because there's so much power in your W as Lulu, and a lot of people aren't really sure what you should do with it in different situations. So you can polymorph the enemy if you want to, which is a really strong option for 2.25 seconds, one of the longest stuns in the game. Effective. I mean, they can hop around as a frog or whatever, but they're not doing anything. They're basically stunned. Or you can give your AD carry a bunch of extra movement speed, 30% movement speed, and an extra 45% attack speed, which is really strong. Or you can put it on your engager, you know, your Olaf, your Mundo, your Hecarim, whatever. You can put it on them and give them the extra movement speed so that they can get in there and start the fight. So there are a lot of different options you can do with this. If it's not the most powerful, it's certainly one of the most powerful enchanter abilities in the game. It's like right there with Sona's W, because it just has so much utility and just so much just raw power on it. The problem with Lulu is, like, the rest of her kit is kind of subpar. Like, the Q is really lackluster. It has a very minimal slow on it. It can get decent damage, and, you know, you'll max this out if you're, like, mid lane Lulu, but for support Lulu, it's really anemic. The shield is okay. They nerfed the shield, though. It only lasts for 2 seconds now, 2.5 seconds. It's kind of on the weaker side, although they have nerfed most of the other shields as well. So a 210 with a 0.6 ratio is not bad. It does double his damage, so that can be helpful. It does give True Sight, so this can actually, I'm like 99% sure this sees Vayne. And that's one of the biggest things right now. So she is a pretty good pick into Vayne for that reason. So if you put picks on them, it will see Vayne for 6 seconds, even if she goes invisible. I'm like 99% sure because it's True Sight. It can also see things like Twitch, Rengar, you know, if they're trying to get away, or just anything that's trying to go invisible. I don't know about Akali because that's true invisibility, which is a whole different kind of stat if she's in her shroud. If you put this on her before she goes in her shroud. I don't know about that one. I haven't tested that. But I'm pretty sure it works on Vayne. So it says True Sight makes a unit visible regardless of Fog of War, Brush, or invisibility, allowing them to be targeted. Vayne's is just normal invisibility, so you should be able to see it. Shaco. If Shaco's trying to get away, you know, you can see him with that. So that's just one little bit of utility that people often forget about that's pretty strong on her. Then her Wild Growth is kind of a mixed bag. Like, it is a really nice infusion of health, but it doesn't benefit from plus healing and shielding. It doesn't benefit from Revitalize. So that's kind of a knock against it. However, it does get around Ignite, so you get the full damage, or you get the full heal on somebody, and it gets around Grievous Wounds. So it's an infusion of health, not a heal. And you can overheal them of sorts. So you can actually do this on a full health target if you want to. And you might say, well, why would you do that? Well, the reason is it's a knockup. So it can stun them. It can keep them from flashing away. And the person that you ult also gets a pretty good slow for up to 7 seconds. So, you know, if your Hecarim runs into the enemy team, you can Wild Growth him. It'll knock everybody up, give him a little bit of CC, and then it'll give him a slow to stick to people so that he can keep spamming his Q. It's a good example. Or if, you know, Hecarim, or like let's just say a Rengar runs up and jumps into the enemy team, you can Wild Growth him, knock up 2 or 3 people, and then the Yasuo on your team can ult them all or something like that, right? Or you can just, you know, preemptively put it on the Rengar so that he doesn't get blown up immediately. So there's a lot of good utility cases for this, and it's on a really low cooldown. One of the main benefits of her, too, is she provides a lot of extra on-hit damage. I mean, if you look at this at level 11, you know, you can do up to 75 damage with this thing. And it's got a 0.15 AP ratio, too. You're usually going to have at least 100 AP. So that's doing 90 on-hit damage every time they auto-attack. Now, Gensu's does not trigger this twice, before anyone asks. I know you're thinking it. It would be cool. It would be OP, but it doesn't work that way. Because it's on attack, not on hit. But still, it's really, really good. You know, if you have a champion that's stacking a ton of attack speed, Vayne, Nico, those are kind of the 2 biggest ones there. But really on almost any 80 carry is going to be pretty good. But especially the attack speed stackers. Kog'Maw, on-hit Varus, anything that's really going to be one of those on-hit, like Twitch. Twitch doesn't go on-hit, but he does get a lot of attack speed. Then it's going to be really good. Now, I mean, just think of the value on that, right? Like 90 on-hit damage. I'm pretty sure on-hit damage is worth 25 each. You're giving like an extra 2250 gold to your 80 carry. It's like you're giving them 7 kills and some change. You're giving them more than a pentakill worth of value at level 11 if you put picks on them. And you can put picks on them with your E. So even if they break this shield, it still stays on them for 6 seconds no matter what. So that's different from Janna's shield. When you break Janna's shield, or it times out or whatever, then you don't get the extra AD. With picks, it stays on there the entire 6 seconds. Right, so since picks are the allies, it shields them. Lulu sends it, okay, 4 seconds. I thought it was 6. Maybe they changed it, but it's 4 seconds. So it still stays on them for quite a long time, even if they break the shield. So that's a really, really powerful interaction. So keep that in mind. Also, if someone goes Wit's End, which is becoming increasingly popular as like a second or as like a third item after Blather and King Gensu's, particularly on Nico, Varus, Kog'Maw, but then also even Vayne is getting that half the time now. then that's really good because as their magic resist gets lowered, then this is going to do even more damage because it's magic damage. So she has a lot of really good synergies. She's particularly powerful with Kog'Maw, Twitch. I think she's very good with Vayne. So she has a lot of really powerful interactions here. So I think she's pretty good. Now, yes, she can get bullied in the landing phase by Sona, by Nami, because she doesn't have a heal. But she's very good against assassins because she has this point-click ult, and she can CC them. So if Zed tries to go in, you can ult the person that he goes on and then whimsy him so that he can't get away with his shadow, and then he's just going to die most of the time. She can also, in theory, take something like a Zeke's if she wanted to because she's not losing out on so much collateral value by not taking plus healing and shielding. So if they have a 5-0 Zed, you can actually go Zeke's on her if you want to. Get the armor so you don't get blown up as easily, and then you have this short cooldown ult where you can trigger Zeke's, and this is going to slow them down as well, so that you can stick to them, or so that your AD carry can do more damage while they're slowed. So, anyways, I think she's pretty good. She doesn't have an amazing win rate, although it is up. It is notable that she was at a 47 or 48% win rate, and now she has gone up 2 or 3 points on this patch, and a lot of that is because we're seeing more and more and more of these Gensu users crop up as the AD carry, and people are remembering, hey, Lulu's really good with on-hit users and these Gensu users. So usually just want to go Frost, Athene's, Ardent Censer, and Redemption, although you can sneak in a Zeke's in there if you want. You could also go Shirelias on some of these champs. If you go Athene's and then like either Ardent or Redemption, and you think your team just needs a bit more speed, like you have an Olaf or a Yi or just something else on your team, then, you know, you can squeeze like a Shirelias in there or like a Mikhail's if they have a lot of CC. There is a bit of wiggle room after Athene's, but I think she's still primarily going to be an Athene's user. You could make a really good argument for going Ardent on her, though, just because the extra attack speed works really well with her picks. So if anyone's going to rush Ardent first item, Lulu would be the person. But Athene's is still really good. She's also not as much of a mana hog because you don't spam her abilities. Like, you kind of wait and react with her abilities more, so... still going to be a strong champ. Okay, Leona, and then we're just going to kind of fly through the rest of them here really quickly. Leona is still pretty good. She is very nice into these champions because they don't have escapes, and they're very squishy, and she blows them up. So she has a really long engage range with her ult. It's very easy to hit on these champs if they don't have flash. It's on a low cooldown, 90 seconds, and she does a ton of burst damage. If she full combos, if she goes in with her E, attack, auto reset with her Q, and your AD carry keeps attacking him, triggering those sunlight procs, she does a ton of damage. So, and she can engage through a minion wave, so she's always a threat if she's standing near the minion wave. So that's why I like Leona. I think just because she has a long range, hard engage tool. It's like 1100 range on her ult, and it's like a 90-second cooldown or something. It's pretty gross. 1200 range, 90-second cooldown that goes down to 60 seconds. You can start fights a lot. And then your Sunlight proc, they buffed this damage at some point, I think, within the last like 10 patches or so. I can't remember. But yeah, even at like level 5, it does 50 extra damage whenever your AD carry attacks them with stuff. So everybody, I'm sure, has experienced it. Leona, super dangerous. If she gets ahead, she snowballs really hard because it's hard not to get engaged on by her if you're an enchanter. You know, this has 875 range. This has 1200 range. It's just gross. And there are a lot of AD carries that can follow up and chain CC and kill you with this. So, like, Nico can root you. Jinx can drop chompers on you. Vayne, if you're anywhere remotely close to a wall, can tumble, get the angle, and pin you into a wall. Then, of course, you have, like, your Jhin who can W you. So, there's a lot of bad things that happen to you if Zenith Blade goes on you. You're usually dead. If she hooks you with Zenith Blade, puts the Ignite on you before your AD carry heals, especially if you don't have Barrier, you're going to die. So, really, really powerful. I end up banning Leona. I think if you're going to consistently play one of these enchanters, I would ban Leona a lot. You know, there are other champs that deserve bans. I used to ban Lucian, but Vayne is so strong right now too that there's just a lot of really powerful AD carries. And this, I feel like it's that way in a lot of roles. I feel like it's a pretty diverse meta. There are a lot of really strong champions. There's a lot of OP stuff out there. But Leona does take the cake for like best sort of hard engage destruction of enchanters right now, and so that's why I ban her. She's just so much more of a threat than Alistar at lower elo. I know people, you know, someone the other day was like, oh, you ban Leona, well, watch out, You know, you got Leona 2.0 with Alistar. I'm like, Alistar is not Leona 2.0. First of all, his engage range is much, much shorter. Okay, Leona can engage on you every 90 seconds from 1200 range. He has to be within 650. Her range on her E, what was it, like 875? This is 650. So, like, Nami can still harass with her W and stay out of range of this headbutt unless he flashes. And it's just a lot less damage. You know, your ult doesn't really do any damage. They took off the bonus AD on it. You know, yeah, you can, you know, combo, but it's just not as much damage as Leona, trust me. And the engage is a lot less guaranteed. I mean, yeah, you can flash, you know, flash pole, flash combo, whatever. But I'm not nearly as scared of Alistar because he doesn't do as much burst damage early on. In many elos. Now, later on, you know, he has great utility in pro play because he can tower dive. And once again, when you have no gold, being able to, you know, press R on a champion and get 55% damage reduction is really, really nice. Versus Leona, when you're going to get a little bit more gold, when you can get something like Zeke's and Knight's Vow, then she's going to be able to get quite a bit of value off of her engage, off of her R, because she's still going to be really tanky and have a really long range engage. Whereas Alistar is just going to have, you know, a really safe engage, and he's going to be tanky no matter what, even if he doesn't have any items. Leona, not as tanky at 0 items, but she gets there, you know, after a couple of items because she scales really well with her W with health and armor and magic resist. So, anyways, I think that Leona is probably the best person if you want to try to counter some of these other enchanters, particularly after Rakan got nerfed. So, very, very strong. If you play Leona, just make sure that you're keeping really good warding, you're tracking the jungle pathing, and you're making sure that you're not going to get ganked. Because she is extremely susceptible to ganks. She has no escapes, and if you fall behind on Leona, it can feel really, really bad, because if you go into a bad fight, you're going to die. You're not going back out. So that's the difference between someone like Leona and a Thresh or a Blitzcrank, is that if you hit that hook on Thresh and it looks like it's going to be a bad fight, you don't have to take it. Blitzcrank, you're pulling people out of position most of the time. So Leona is much more dangerous in that respect, but I think in other respects she's much more reliable, because that E can go through minions and hit people, and that R is almost guaranteed to at least slow the enchanter, even if it doesn't stun them, if they don't have their flash, and then you're going to be able to hit them with the E either way. So super strong champion right now. Okay, just the rest of them we'll blow through in just a couple of minutes here. I really didn't want this to be longer than an hour, but I kind of wanted to explain, as I always do, stuff out there. Thresh, you know, he got knocked down a little bit. He got nerfed a couple of times last patch. He's still really good. It's just he's a super high skill cap. You have to be very, very talented on it to make him work. But if you're flashing level 2, flaying, landing those hooks, getting those kills early on in the laning phase, he can completely take over the game by himself. Just he requires that coordination. Your team has to actually click the lantern. They have to follow up with you whenever you take your hooks. You have to actually land those hooks. You know, it's got a half-second delay, and it's a really slender hitbox. You have to time those flays right. You know, when Leona's going in, you can flay her back. That's a pretty easy one to hit. But like Alistar going in, that's a bit harder to flay back. So Jarvan going in, you got to be pretty quick with it. So Alistar is probably one of the toughest ones. Like, you really have to like almost predict whenever he's going to go in with his W to get him on time. But very rewarding, really fun to play. His items are pretty trash right now. I think a lot of people are just going Redemption Locket because he doesn't get full value out of Knight's Vow because he's not considered melee. He doesn't get full value out of Relic Shield. So he's just kind of in an awkward spot. But nevertheless, his kit is really strong. He's got the lantern. He's got the hook, the flay. He's got a lot of utility to him. So he can still be a very strong champ if you're good on him. Janna is situationally very powerful as a peeler. So if they have a lot of hard dive, you know, they have like a Zac who's going to go in on you, or they have maybe something like a Sejuani, then Janna's going to be good at that. So like Sona can't do anything about Zac. So if Zac just dives right on top of Sona, she's dead if she doesn't have flash. Like, there's not anything you can do about that. Nami is similar. Your bubble's going to be too slow. Your R is going to be too slow. So some of these champs that have like really hard dive can be difficult to deal with. And that's where you would pick Janna. You know, if they do manage to get Leona, if you don't ban her and you want to play an enchanter, Janna's one of the better into that because her tornado can stop her from going in. And then Janna is pretty good against champions like Lee Sin, could knock him out of the air. Of course, Zac that I mentioned before, very good against that. Pretty decent against Jarvan. You know, just anything that's going to want to jump around and try to get on you, you can stop that with the tornado. And then you have really good scaling with your ult. Your laning phase is trash, though. Like, it's really bad. Like, yeah, you can spam W on people, but that W spam is not going to be as strong, usually, as something like Nami wave spam or Sona Q spam. So you can get 3 points in W and then max your shield and have some pressure in the laning phase, but in general, your laning phase is one of the weaker of most enchanters because you don't have a heal and your shield is on an 18-second cooldown early on, which is just absolutely disgusting, that nerf they did to her, but... Excuse me. Sorry. Trying to swallow it too fast. Okay. Jeez. So, she has a pretty decent win rate. There we go. Jesus. All right. Sorry about that. So, she's still going to be one of the highest win rate champs. She's what, number 6? So, it's not like she's completely worthless. It's just like her laning phase is really bad, but she still is very good at protecting AD carries, particularly squishy AD carries that don't have mobility. So, things like Jinx, Twitch, Draven. Although you want someone more aggressive with Draven usually, but like Jinx and Twitch are good examples of hyper-scaling AD carries where you just want to peel off of them. They can't peel for themselves. But like things like, you know, Vayne, Ezreal, those type of champs, Lucian, are going to have enough mobility where you don't need the peel of Janna. It's nice, but they can kind of do their own thing too. But especially for the Twitches and the Jinxes of the world out there, then Janna can be pretty good. So, strong champ, weak in the laning phase, very powerful late game, really good, Queen of Peel, still going to be good in a lot of situations, but I would wait and make sure they don't have something like Sona or Nami or Soraka, like one of these other enchanters, because they might be able to bully her out early, and they can kind of match her later on in scaling as well. She also doesn't use Athenes very well. She doesn't put out a ton of damage early on. And she doesn't particularly use Ardent or Airy very well either, because she only has one way to put her ult can put it on people, but it's on a really long cooldown. But, you know, really it's just her shield is her only way she can put it on a single target. Her Airy. And so that's kind of rough. Whereas all of these enchanters have multiple ways. I guess Soraka doesn't have multiple ways, but like Nami with her wave bounce and her E can put Airy, trigger Ardent Sensor on multiple targets. You know, Sona obviously multi-target. Even Lulu, though, she could put her W on somebody. That will put Airy on them to give them the Ardent Sensor buff, and then you can shield somebody else, and that will give them the Ardent Sensor buff as well. So she can only put Sensor on one person most of the time. With Janna, it's on a long cooldown. Yeah. So she's just not, like, super well-suited to the types of items that are very strong right now, but overall, she's still pretty good. Then finally, you have Blitzcrank here. I mean, everybody knows Blitz. You hit the hooks. He's very good. You miss the hooks. He's terrible. He really doesn't have a lot of utility to his kit. He's just like, you have to take over the game early. Roam around, get your Moby Boots, land those hooks. You know, 1v9 in the game. If you can't do that, you're going to get destroyed. So I typically would prefer to go something like Leona, who has more utility. She has more CC. She has more guaranteed engage with her ultimate, especially on immobile, squishy 80 supports. So just, you know, kind of up to your preference, but I think that Leona overall is better, and I think she has a higher win rate. Actually, I stand corrected. Blitz does have the higher win rate, but I just think that Leona is going to have more utility to her. Okay, Morgana we talked about before. She's primarily a counter pick against things like Thresh, like Leona. She's sort of like an enchanter. She does provide that protection off her Black Shield. She still has a 3-second bind, which is really strong. Her ultimate, once you get Hourglass, you can engage with Flash ult if you need to. That's kind of shaky as support. Usually you want to save that to peel, but it's a pretty good counter pick overall. And then Zyra can still be strong. They did nerf her plants. They nerfed Scorch. You know, a while ago, they nerfed Absolute Focus, they nerfed Ignite, they nerfed Dark Harvest, they nerfed Electrocute. So they've just nerfed, like, everything about this champion for the most part. But she can still do a pretty large amount of damage. You know, she's still up there, 52.5%. Definitely respectable. It's just you better murder them, like, in the early game. If you let Sona get to, you know, Athene's plus Redemption, it's going to be very, very difficult to kill anybody when she's in the area. After that, she just has so much healing. It's just disgusting with Revitalize plus Athene's plus Airy plus all of her other stuff going on. It's just like a million different effects flying around, and just nobody's health bar is going to move, you know, when you unload your spells on them. So she's okay, but you have to absolutely crush people early on. She's still kind of like a smurfer type of champ, but if you're not smurfing, it can be rough. Okay, Rakan situationally pretty good. You know, into AD assassins, you might want to pick him. So if they have like a Zed or a Talon, Rengar, you know, that type of stuff, because he can get armor early and he can take Guardian and shield his ally, both with the Guardian and with his E. So he has a lot of tools. The problem is he's going to get outscaled by some of these enchanters. He still has like pretty decent engage if your ult is up. Your raw W is terrible, but ult plus W is still pretty good. So it's up to you. If they have a lot of melee champs on their team, particularly assassin type of champs, then Rakan can be pretty strong. Brand, usually just a worse version of Zyra. Doesn't have the utility of Zyra's plants and bushes, but he can still do a lot of damage. If you land those stuns on these squishy enchanters and they don't have a lot of items yet, you know, you can definitely kill them. But, you know, if they have exhaust or barrier, that becomes a lot harder. But overall, still a decent champ. I just think if you want to play an AP champ, I'd play Zyra. Pyke, you know, seems like he really would be good against these enchanters, but his itemization path has been pretty bad ever since they nerfed tank Pyke. It's kind of like with Zyra and Brand. If you get ahead early, if you get a lot of gold, you can scale, you can take over and sort of tear through that Sona and Nami. But if they end up, you know, getting too much health, getting too much plus healing and shielding, it's going to be very, very difficult to get a hold of them. So he's pretty decent. I'd probably rather just go with Leona or Thresh. What is Pyke's win rate? Like 50% or something. Yeah, it's like 47 or 49.7. So he can still be pretty decent, but if he doesn't snowball, then it can be tough to get back into the game. Alistar, fantastic in pro play, not so great in solo queue. Just requires people to go all in with you. Doesn't do nearly as much damage as he used to after the nerf to his E. You can't really abuse his tower diving mechanic off of his ult unless you have a really organized high elo team. You know, he is always a threat in the laning phase if you can count on your partner to follow up with you, but I'd rather just play Leona. She's just going to put out a ton more damage in the laning phase if you want that, and she's going to have a longer range engage. And a lot of teams are going to lack engage, especially at kind of that 1200 range. So Alistar does engage. It's just a much shorter range, and a lot of times you have to have flash available to get on people, but he's okay. Great in solo queue, or decent in solo queue, I'd say, but not as great in or decent in pro play, not as great in solo queue. Although I would say it looks like he's under 50% in the last week, so keep in mind. Braum, same deal. Really good at team fighting. Really good off of 0 items. Going to get outscaled hard by enchanters. But can be pretty good, especially for AD carries that do AoE damage. So like your Twitches, your Zayas, you know, stuff like that, where that shield is gaining a lot of value by blocking a ton of different projectiles for your team. Can be pretty good. Pretty good pick into Nami in general, because you can block her wave. It's so slow and easy to block. You can block bubbles and things like that. So he's a pretty decent matchup into Nami. So if you have a really team fight oriented team, a bunch of auto attackers on your team, you got a Kindred, a Master Yi, something like that, then Braum can be pretty good. Okay, final honorable mentions. We have Galio. He's kind of the new hotness. Everyone's playing him in pro. Pretty low win rate overall in solo queue. He's only 48%. I think he's the same thing as like Tom, Braum, Alistar. Like, I think that's why he's being played in pro, is because He operates really well off of like no gold, and he has that ultimate, which is really good for team fight pressure. So that's the main thing, and you're not going to use that very well in solo queue. So, you know, you're going to try to ult somebody and they're going to run away, or your team's just going to be too split up, and it's just not going to be high impact a large portion of the time, and you need it to be high impact for Galio to be viable. It's just like Tahm Kench, right? Tahm Kench is amazing in pro play because of his ability to make superb macro rotations with his ultimate. How often does that actually happen in solo queue? Rarely. You have to like spam ping over and over again for like 2 minutes to get your jungler to even come down and use your ult to gank, which is like 0 level critical thinking to understand how it's powerful. There's so many more uses for Tahm Kench's ult. You know, you can rotate to Barons quickly. You can rotate to side lanes and take towers if people are off sides. Like, lots of really good uses for Tahm Kench's ult. You can just go back to lane with your AD carry so you don't miss a wave, you know, after you go buy an item. So there are a lot of really good uses for Tahm Kench's ult, but a lot of people don't do it in solo queue, and it's the same thing with Galio. He does have some poke with his Q. He has a lot of CC with his Justice Punch and his taunt. You have to have your flash available really to engage with him, though. You have to charge your taunt and then flash on the enemy team. Now, sometimes that's going to work on him, but a lot of times people are going to see that coming. So he's all right. I just think he's going to get outscaled a lot. His engage is questionable, but he does have pretty good peel. So I think he's pretty solid in pro play. He's getting picked quite a lot. Pretty decent win rate. But in solo queue, I don't think so if you're under Diamond particularly. And then you have Fiddlesticks, Orange, Jarvan, and Vhagar, who are all decent in the right spot. But we're out of time, so I'm going to go ahead and end it there. That's going to be it. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Check out the rest of the content on the channel. Come by, check out the stream sometime, starting around 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I'll see you next time. Have a great day.